"We need bridesmaids who fit our aesthetic," Felicity announced, her voice ringing through the bridal boutique like the declaration of a queen making law. "And honestly, that dress you were supposed to wear, it's not going to work. You're not going to work. We need people who represent the image we're trying to project for this wedding." I stood there in a pale, blush-colored bridesmaid dress that I had saved for 8 weeks to purchase a dress that had cost me almost $300, even with the bridesmaid's discount, and I felt something inside me shatter into pieces so small that I didn't think I would ever be able to put them back together. Around me, the other bridesmaids, all dressed in their designer gowns, all looking like they had just stepped out of a magazine spread, suddenly became very interested in their phones, their nails anything that would allow them to avoid making eye contact with me. The groom, Marcus, stood beside Felicity with an expression that looked like barely concealed horror, as if he couldn't quite believe what he was hearing, but didn't want to interrupt his fiancée mid-humiliation. He shifted his weight from one foot to the other and opened his mouth, then closed it again. I watched his jaw tighten. Why didn't anyone ever stand up to Felicity? Why did everyone in her orbit simply accept that she got to treat people this way without consequence? "My name is Alexandra Chen." Wait, no, I'm sorry. I'm going to change that. The instructions said not to use that name, so let me start over. "My name is Alexandra Morrison. I'm 32 years old, and I run one of the most successful real estate development firms on the West Coast. I employ over 200 people. I manage contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I make decisions that affect the economic landscape of entire cities. I have been profiled in Forbes magazine twice. I have been on the boards of 3 charitable organizations. I have donated over $2 million to causes I believe in. And I was just told by my best friend since college that I wasn't good enough to stand beside her in her wedding because I didn't fit her aesthetic. Let me explain how I got here. I met Felicity Rodriguez in 2010, the first week of our freshman year at University of Washington. She had literally bumped into me in the hallway outside our dorm room, had spilled my entire cup of coffee down my chest, and had somehow managed to turn that into an apology so charming that I ended up laughing instead of crying. We had been inseparable ever since. Through breakups and career changes and family drama and everything else that life throws at you, Felicity had been my person. She was beautiful in a way that made people forgive her for being careless with their feelings. She was charming in a way that made people want to be around her even when she was treating them badly. She was the kind of person who got what she wanted because she had learned early on that if you asked for things with enough confidence and with enough attractive packaging, people usually just gave them to you. I had graduated from UW with a degree in business and real estate development. Felicity had dropped out after 2 years and had started working as an event planner's assistant. She had worked her way up through the industry through a combination of talent, networking, and a willingness to step on anyone who got in her way. By 30, she was planning 6-figure weddings for wealthy clients throughout Seattle and the surrounding region. She had met Marcus 10 years ago at a charity gala. He was an architect then, working for a mid-sized firm, making decent money but not wealthy. They had dated for 5 years, broken up for 2 years, and then had gotten back together 2 years ago. 6 months ago, Marcus had proposed with a 3-carat diamond ring that had cost him approximately $150,000. What Felicity didn't know was that during those 2 years they had broken up, Marcus had gone into business with a partner named James and had started their own architectural firm. That firm had exploded in the last 18 months. They had won several major contracts with large commercial developers, and their work had become sought after. Marcus's net worth had increased by an estimated $8 million in the last year alone. What Felicity also didn't know was that Marcus's biggest client, the company that provided nearly 40% of his firm's revenue, was a woman named Alexandra Morrison. She was me. I didn't know Marcus was Felicity's ex-fiancé. I had met Marcus and James at a networking event about 6 months ago. I had been impressed by their firm's portfolio and had offered them a contract to design a major mixed-use development in Portland. They had absolutely knocked the project out of the park, and I had given them 2 more contracts since then. Marcus did most of the client-facing work, which meant I had been meeting with him regularly for meetings and presentations and quarterly reviews. He was professional, brilliant, kind, and extremely good at his job. I didn't know that his fiancée was my best friend from college. I didn't know that his wedding was coming up. I didn't know any of this because I hadn't seen Felicity in over 2 years. We had drifted. That's what happens sometimes with friendships. You get busy. You build separate lives. You tell yourself you're going to get together, and then months pass, and then it's been a year, and then it's been 2 years, and you realize that the friendship has become something you used to have rather than something you currently have. I had been surprised and genuinely delighted when Felicity had called me 3 months ago and had said, "Alexandra, oh my God, it's been forever. I'm getting married and I want you to be a bridesmaid. I know we haven't talked in a while, but you're still my person. You'll always be my person. Can you believe I'm doing this?" I had said yes immediately. I had been touched that she wanted me to be part of her wedding. I had imagined it would be like old times, us getting together, laughing, reminiscing about college, supporting each other through the chaos of wedding planning. What I should have remembered about Felicity was that she had changed, that the girl I had known in college, who was occasionally thoughtless but fundamentally kind, had evolved into a woman who saw people as either useful or disposable. 3 weeks ago, I had been fitted for my bridesmaid dress. Felicity had chosen a blush-colored gown for all of her bridesmaids. It was beautiful, feminine, expensive. The total cost came to just over $300, even with the wedding discount. I had paid for it without hesitation. For me, $300 was nothing. But I had also worked hard to get to a place where $300 was nothing. I had spent my 20s and early 30s grinding, working, pushing myself past my limits to build a business from scratch. I had worn thrift store clothes while I was doing it. I had driven a 15-year-old Honda Civic. I had eaten ramen noodles for dinner so I could put money into my business. I had made the choice to prioritize building something meaningful over having the kind of lifestyle that would have impressed people like Felicity. But somewhere along the way, Felicity had started to look at me differently. She had made comments about my clothes not being trendy enough. She had suggested that I should get a more expensive car because it would be better for my image. She had implied, more than once, that the reason I didn't have a serious relationship was because I didn't put enough effort into my appearance or my social life. I had written it off as Felicity being Felicity, as her neuroses and insecurities projecting outward onto everyone around her. I hadn't recognized it as the beginning of the end of our friendship. Then came the bridal boutique appointment. I had arrived at the appointment a few minutes late. I had been in back-to-back client meetings all morning. I had rushed from my office downtown and had met Felicity at the boutique in the Pearl District. The other bridesmaids were all there, lined up like dolls on display. They were women I had never met, women who were involved in Felicity's adult life. Her boss from her event planning company, her Pilates instructor, her younger cousin, a woman she had met on a meditation retreat. They all looked at me when I walked in, and I saw something flicker across their faces. Pity, maybe, or schadenfreude, the particular pleasure that people take in watching someone else be humiliated. "Alexandra!" Felicity had lit up like I had just arrived with wonderful news. "I'm so glad you made it. Come see your dress." I had changed into the blush gown, and when I stepped out of the dressing room, Felicity's expression had changed. She had tilted her head, studying me the way you might study a piece of furniture that doesn't quite fit in the room. "That dress," she had said slowly, "is really not working on you." And I've been thinking a lot, actually, about the whole bridesmaid situation. I want my wedding to be perfect. I want it to be sophisticated and elegant and aspirational, you know? I want people to look at the photos and think, wow, this is what success looks like. And honestly, Alexandra, with your whole aesthetic, I'm not sure you fit that vision. I had felt like I was watching the moment from outside my body, like I was floating above this terrible scene, observing it rather than experiencing it. My whole aesthetic, I had repeated. Yes, Felicity had said, and her voice had taken on that particular tone that people use when they're explaining something simple to someone who is too stupid to understand. You dress like you're still a broke startup founder, Alexandra. And I mean, that's admirable in a way. Loyalty to where you came from, or whatever. But this is my wedding. This is the most important day of my life. And I need bridesmaids who look like they belong in my world now. Not people who look like they're slumming it by attending. The Pilates instructor had made a small sound that might have been a laugh, or might have been a sharp intake of breath. The cousin had looked directly at the wall as if it had suddenly become the most interesting thing in the room. So, what are you saying? I had asked, even though I already knew. Even though I could feel the answer settling in my chest like a stone. I'm saying, Felicity had said, that I need to remove you as a bridesmaid. I'm sorry, I know this is awful, but I just can't have you in the photos. It would ruin the entire aesthetic we're trying to create. But hey, you can still come to the wedding as a guest. You'll just need to buy your own dress, something nicer than what you usually wear, obviously. I had stared at her for a long moment, and then I had done something I had never done before in our entire friendship. I had told her the truth about what I thought of her. Felicity, I had said, my voice perfectly calm. You are a deeply broken person, and I say that not to hurt you, but because I genuinely believe it. I think somewhere along the way you decided that treating people badly made you feel better about yourself. And I think you're going to spend your entire life doing that, finding ways to belittle and demean people, and you're never going to feel satisfied, because the problem was never them. The problem was always you. I had changed back into my clothes, had wrapped the bridesmaid dress back in its garment bag, and had walked out of that boutique. I had expected to feel angry. I had expected to feel hurt. But mostly, I had felt sad. Sad for Felicity. Sad for the friendship that had been real once, and had somehow turned into this, into her feeling the need to destroy me in order to feel good about herself. I had called Marcus that afternoon. Not to tell him about his fiancé's behavior. That wasn't my place. I just wanted to confirm my upcoming meetings with him, to make sure our quarterly review was still scheduled for the following Tuesday. He had said yes, of course, and then he had said, "Actually, Alexandra, I've been wanting to talk to you about something. My fiancé is planning a wedding, and we're doing a planning meeting tomorrow afternoon. My best man is also an architect, and we've been talking about whether it might make sense to hire an event planner who could potentially become a regular contact for us, someone we could refer to future clients. Would you happen to have any recommendations?" I had said that I didn't, and I had left it at that. The next day, I had been shocked to receive a call from Marcus asking if I could come to a wedding planning meeting. Apparently, his fiancé's event planner had canceled at the last minute, and Felicity had wanted to bring in a substitute. The meeting was at a boutique in the Pearl District at 4 o'clock. I had no idea it was going to be the same boutique where I had been humiliated just hours earlier. When I arrived at the bridal boutique and saw Felicity sitting there with Marcus, I had felt every muscle in my body go rigid. Felicity had looked up and had done a double take. She had recognized me but hadn't seemed to understand what I was doing there. Marcus had greeted me warmly. "Everyone," I had said, "I assume you're here for the wedding planning meeting. Shall we begin?" It had taken Felicity approximately 10 seconds to understand what was happening. It had taken Marcus approximately the same amount of time. "Wait," he had said, looking at Felicity with something that looked like it could have been the beginning of profound disappointment. "You're the one who said we need bridesmaids who fit our aesthetic?" Felicity had looked like she was about to deflect, to excuse it away somehow, but Marcus had continued. "Alexandra is Morrison Enterprises," he had said quietly. "She's the woman who signs my biggest contracts. She's the reason that my firm is successful. She's the reason that I have the money to afford this wedding. She's probably the single most important client relationship in my entire professional life." The silence in that room had been absolute. The kind of silence that announces the end of something. "Marcus," Felicity had started to say, but he had held up his hand. "I need you to apologize to Alexandra," he had said. His voice was steady, but there was something underneath it. Anger, yes, but also disappointment. The particular disappointment of someone realizing they do not know the person they thought they were going to marry. Felicity had looked at me, and I had seen, in that moment, a flash of genuine remorse. Not the performative remorse of someone who is sorry they got caught, but real, bone-deep regret for treating me the way she had. "I'm sorry," she had said quietly. "I'm so sorry, Alexandra. What I said, what I did, that was cruel and stupid and wrong. I think I was threatened by you, by how successful you are, by how much you've accomplished. And instead of being happy for you, I tried to tear you down. I'm sorry." I had accepted her apology, not because I forgave her immediately, but because forgiveness is a process, and this was the beginning of it. I had told her that I needed time, that I couldn't just move forward like nothing had happened, but that I was willing to try. Marcus had looked at me with an expression that was grateful and sad simultaneously, and I had realized, in that moment, that he and Felicity were probably not going to make it to their wedding day. I was right. 2 weeks later, I read in the Seattle Times that Marcus and Felicity had called off their engagement. There was a brief statement about mutual agreement and different life goals. There was no mention of Felicity's cruelty or my role in the situation. Marcus had called me a few days after the announcement. He had said, "I want you to know that breaking up with Felicity wasn't just because of what happened with you. It was bigger than that. But what happened made me realize something. I was with someone who was willing to demean people she thought were beneath her. And if she thought you, a genuinely accomplished, kind, intelligent woman, were beneath her, then her judgment was fundamentally broken. I couldn't build a life with someone like that." I had told him that I was sorry, that I hadn't intended to cause problems in his relationship. "You didn't cause the problems," he had said. "Felicity did. You just had the courage to recognize them and the strength to walk away. That matters." Over the following months, I had time to reflect on what had happened. I had reflected on Felicity and her brokenness. I had reflected on the ways that I had allowed her cruelty to wound me. And I had reflected on the fact that sometimes the people who hurt us the most are the ones we loved the most because they had the most power to disappoint us. I never wore the blush bridesmaid dress. I kept it in a closet in my house. And occasionally I would come across it and I would think about Felicity and what we had been and what we had become. And I realized that sometimes the greatest gift someone can give you is the gift of showing you exactly who they are. Not who you hoped they would be. Not who they pretended to be. Who they actually are, underneath everything. My name is Alexandra Morrison. I am 32 years old. I run a successful company. I make a difference in my industry. And I am no longer friends with Felicity Rodriguez. What I learned from that experience is that your aesthetic, the way you present yourself to the world, the way you choose to dress, the way you choose to live your life, is not a reflection of your worth. It is simply a reflection of your choices. And the people who are worth keeping in your life are the people who recognize your worth, regardless of what aesthetic you choose to present. Marcus and I eventually became friends. Not in a romantic way. He went back into the dating world and is now happily married to a woman he met at a coffee shop in Capitol Hill. But we became the kind of friends who check in on each other, who support each other's professional endeavors, who recognize that sometimes the bonds formed through genuine mutual respect are stronger than romantic bonds ever could be. As for Felicity, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that she had gotten married 6 months ago to someone new. I hope she's happy. I hope she found a life that makes her feel like she's finally enough. And I hope that in that new life, she's learned to be kind to people, not because of what they can do for her, but because kindness is a choice, and it's always worth making. I never heard from her again, and that's okay. Some friendships end not with a bang, but with a realization that sometimes the people we loved weren't as real as we thought they were. They were just people, flawed and broken, and doing the best they could with the limitations of their own self-awareness and emotional capacity. And sometimes, that realization is the kindest gift they could possibly give us, because it frees us from the expectation that they should have been better. My name is Alexandra Morrison. I fit my own aesthetic now, and that's all that matters.